Her mountain trail vanished, but her body surfaced 3 years later. That is the difficult shape of the Suzanne Morphew case. A disappearance on May 10, 2020, near her home in Maysville, Colorado. A long stretch of unanswered time. A first prosecution that was dismissed. Then, in September 2023, the discovery of her remains near Moffett, Colorado. And after that, a renewed criminal case, with Barry Morphew indicted by a grand jury in June 2025 on a charge of first-degree murder. He has pleaded not guilty. He is awaiting trial. Those facts matter at the center of this story, because this is not a documentary about declaring guilt or innocence. It is about following the public record through a case that has shifted more than once, and about understanding why the years between Suzanne's disappearance and the discovery of her remains still matter so deeply. Suzanne Morphew was 49 years old, a mother of 2, and she disappeared near the home she shared with Barry Morphew. According to the public account of the case, she was reported missing after failing to return from a bike ride. In the earliest days, that was the public image people held onto. A woman expected home, a mountain setting, and a search for answers that began close to where she lived. But the case did not remain a simple missing person investigation. Over time, it became a criminal case, then a dismissed case, then a renewed murder prosecution after the discovery of her remains. Each stage changed what the public knew. Each stage also left certain questions unresolved. To understand why the case still draws attention, it helps to begin with the geography. Maysville, Colorado, was the place where Suzanne was last connected to her ordinary life. That setting matters because the disappearance did not begin as an abstract legal file. It began with a person who did not return. It began with a family, a home, and a mountain area where a routine day became something else entirely. Years later, Suzanne's remains were discovered near Moffett, Colorado. The public record confirms both locations, the disappearance near Maysville and the later discovery near Moffett. What it does not fully explain is the space between them. That space is more than a distance on a map. It is the central uncertainty in the case. What happened after Suzanne disappeared? How did a missing person report become a murder charge? And why did the case take more than 3 years to reach the point where her remains were found? The chronology tells part of the story, even before anyone tries to interpret it. On May 10, 2020, Suzanne Morphew disappeared near her home in Maysville, Colorado, after reportedly failing to return from a bike ride. In May 2021, Barry Morphew was arrested and charged with first-degree murder and other related charges. At that point, the investigation had moved into a formal criminal prosecution. The state was no longer only treating Suzanne as missing. Prosecutors were accusing her husband of murder. But that first prosecution did not proceed to trial. In April 2022, all charges against Barry Morphew were dismissed without prejudice due to prosecutorial issues. That phrase, without prejudice, is important. It meant the case was dismissed at that time, but the dismissal did not legally prevent prosecutors from bringing charges again later. It was not an acquittal. It was not a jury verdict. It was the end of one legal chapter, but not necessarily the end of the investigation. Then came the discovery that changed the public shape of the case again. In September 2023, Suzanne Morphew's remains were found near Moffett, Colorado. The discovery did not answer every question. It did not, by itself, identify who was responsible. It did not erase the legal complications that had already surrounded the case. But it did establish a new factual point in the timeline. Suzanne was no longer missing. Her death had to be examined through the evidence that could still be recovered and interpreted after years had passed. In June 2025, a grand jury indicted Barry Morphew on a charge of first-degree murder in Suzanne's death. He was arrested in Arizona that same month following the indictment. In January 2026, he pleaded not guilty to the murder charge. The case is now awaiting trial, with proceedings scheduled to begin in October 2026. Those are the confirmed legal markers. They are also reminders of what has not yet happened. An indictment is a formal accusation. It is not a conviction. A not guilty plea is a legal response to that accusation. It does not tell us what happened to Suzanne. It tells us that the charge will be contested in court. Until a verdict is reached, the central facts alleged by the state must still be tested through evidence, legal argument, and cross-examination. That legal caution is not a formality. It is essential to telling this case responsibly. The state's renewed case appears to involve evidence and allegations connected to tranquilizers. According to investigators, a tranquilizer gun and a needle cap were found in the Morphew home, suggesting to them the possible use of tranquilizers. Prosecutors have also pointed to reported autopsy findings that revealed traces of a wildlife tranquilizer cocktail known as BAM in Suzanne's remains. In addition, prosecutors have alleged that Barry Morphew was the only private citizen in the area known to have access to BAM. Those claims may be important to the state's theory, but they must be described carefully. A reported finding is not the same as a courtroom conclusion. An item recovered from a home does not by itself prove when it was used, how it was used, or whether it was connected to a death. An allegation about access does not automatically establish action. These are the kinds of details that prosecutors may seek to use as part of a broader case, and that the defense may challenge in court. That is one reason the 3-year gap matters so much. When remains are found long after a person disappeared, the case becomes both more concrete and more complicated. There is finally a physical recovery, a confirmed discovery, and a new opportunity for forensic examination. But time can also make interpretation harder. Evidence may be incomplete. Context may be disputed. The public may want a clear answer. While the courtroom must work within rules of proof, this is where a true crime story can easily become misleading if it moves too quickly. The presence of a substance, the recovery of an item, or the existence of marital problems cannot be treated as proof of murder. They are pieces of a case only if a court allows them, and only if they are connected by reliable evidence. The state has made allegations. Barry Morphew has pleaded not guilty. The trial process will determine what a jury is allowed to hear, what weight that evidence deserves, and whether prosecutors can prove the charge beyond the required legal standard. The case also includes claims about Suzanne and Barry Morphew's marriage. According to the allegations and reports summarized in the public record, the couple had marital issues, and Suzanne was reportedly considering divorce. That context may be presented by prosecutors as part of their theory, but it should not be overstated. Many relationships experience conflict, and conflict alone does not prove violence. In a legally careful account, those details remain background allegations unless and until they are connected to the charge through evidence accepted in court. What makes the Morphew case so unusual is not just that it includes a disappearance, a body later found, and a murder indictment. It is that the legal process itself has become part of the story. The first charges were dismissed without prejudice in 2022 because of prosecutorial issues. That kind of dismissal can affect public confidence, defense strategy, and the way a later case is viewed. When prosecutors returned in 2025 with a new indictment, they were not simply resuming a story that had paused. They were bringing a renewed accusation after the discovery of Suzanne's remains and after a prior prosecution had already failed to move forward. That raises a question the court will have to confront indirectly through motions, evidence, and trial testimony. What is different now? The discovery of remains is an obvious change in the public timeline. The alleged toxicology findings and the state's claims about access to BAM may also be part of the renewed prosecution. But the public record does not provide a complete explanation of every investigative step that led from the 2022 dismissal to the 2025 indictment. It gives us milestones, not the full interior of the case. And that distinction matters. A timeline can show when things happened. It cannot always show why they happened, or what every participant knew at each moment. It can tell us that Suzanne disappeared in May 2020. It can tell us Barry Morphew was first arrested in May 2021. It can tell us the charges were dismissed in April 2022. It can tell us her remains were discovered in September 2023. It can tell us he was indicted and arrested in June 2025, and that he pleaded not guilty in January 2026. But the timeline alone cannot fill in the missing hours, days, and years between those events. That is the unresolved center of the case. For Suzanne's family and for the public, the discovery near Moffett brought one kind of answer, but not every answer. It confirmed that Suzanne had been found. It allowed the case to move into a different phase. Yet the circumstances of her death, the meaning of the alleged evidence, and the question of who, if anyone, can be held legally responsible remain matters for the courtroom. For Barry Morphew, the renewed indictment means he again faces the most serious accusation in connection with his wife's death. But under the law, he remains presumed not guilty unless and until prosecutors prove the charge in court. That presumption is not a technicality. It is the foundation of how this case must be discussed before trial. For investigators and prosecutors, the challenge is to bridge a gap that has defined the case from the beginning. They must connect the disappearance near Maysville, the remains found near Moffett, the alleged evidence involving tranquilizers, and any claimed motive or context into a case that can survive legal scrutiny. For the defense, the task is to challenge the state's interpretation, test the evidence, and argue that the prosecution has not met its burden. The public may see headlines. The court will have to weigh proof. That is why the story still feels suspended between two images. The first is the mountain trail. Suzanne reportedly gone on a bike ride, expected to come back, and then missing. The second is the evidence file years later. Remains discovered, forensic claims reported, a grand jury indictment returned, and a not guilty plea entered. Between those two images is the 3-year gap that gives this case its haunting weight. But a gap is not proof. Unanswered questions do not establish guilt. They establish only that the public record is incomplete and that the courtroom still has work to do. What happened to Suzanne Morphew after May 10, 2020 is the question at the heart of the case. Why her remains were not found until September 2023 is part of that same unresolved story. and whether the renewed prosecution can prove its allegation against Barry Morphew is a question that remains for trial. Until then, the confirmed facts are stark enough on their own. A woman disappeared near her home. Her husband was charged. The case was dismissed without prejudice. Her remains were found years later, and a grand jury later returned a new murder indictment. Barry Morphew has pleaded not guilty, and the legal process is still ongoing. The mountain trail was where the public story began. The evidence bag is where the renewed case now rests, and between them is a silence that only a courtroom may begin to answer. Follow Whispered Cases for a new case every week. Subscribe so you never miss one.